Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. Today we're going to finish up what we started and tackle the last half of the horror on YouTube Iceberg. It really takes a turn into obscurity when we get into the last three tiers here, which is great because I found some really cool channels that I've never heard of and am now subscribed to. But on the other hand, some of these had me thinking, maybe there's a reason these are obscure. Either way, it's been really fun digging into them, so I hope you guys find these just as interesting as I did. Shout out to the Sears Jeremy on Reddit for creating the iceberg and giving me the go-ahead to make this video, but let's not delay any longer, let's finish up tier 4 and keep it moving from here. So without further ado, here's the rest of the horror on YouTube iceberg. Tier 4 continued. Super Mario 64 Classified. Super Mario 64 Classified is a horror series based around the idea that every copy of the game is personalized. It follows the supposed team of developers who are on an almost impossible time crunch to get the game finished. One of these developers, Jim, finds and activates a personalization AI within the game, and from there continues to playtest the game, which has increasingly bizarre things occurring, including ominous messages directly to the player and a faceless Mario appearing in the game. Essentially, the AI is sentient and continues to warn Jim to leave and quit playing the game or searching for the anomalies on the cartridge. It's very complicated, but you get the general idea. There's a lot of videos in this series, and I have to say, the execution of this one is top notch. It's just a burning memory. I think this is referring to the song by Caretaker. This song's lo-fi quality invokes a sense of horror in many listeners, and it's come to be associated with the Backrooms. The artist, Caretaker, samples big band music from the early 1940s and has mentioned that he was heavily inspired by the haunted ballroom scene in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The interesting thing about the album that this song is off of, titled Everywhere at the End of Time, is that the album was actually made to portray the progression of Alzheimer's disease by using degrading loops of sampled ballroom music. That's pretty wild, and knowing that gives me an extra eerie feeling when listening to it. Reach Animations. Reach Animations primarily makes VHS-style videos based off of Five Nights at Freddy's, with the popular videos being centered around the character Ennard. These are pretty well done, and especially considering how oversaturated Five Nights at Freddy's content is, I do think Reach Animations stands out. Felled Up. Although this isn't the most obscure entry by far, it might have been the most hard for me to research because Felled Up is a French creator, I don't speak French, and his videos don't have English captions. I know that Felled Up essentially covers a lot of horror topics and makes videos somewhat similar to this one. The thing is, there's apparently an ARG revolving around his channel based on several clues, like the fact that he repeats certain phrases and sometimes has shorts at the end of his videos that might be connected. That's all I could figure out. But, I mean, maybe that's an opportunity to ask you guys, someone who speaks French who can explain the whole Felled Up situation, what the ARG is about. Leave a comment. Tier 5. Meat Sleep. Meat Sleep is a really strange and cryptic YouTube channel. It's kind of hard to explain these videos since they're so erratic, but essentially you get the impression that these are made by a killer/cannibal. Everything's shot from a POV and is typically extremely shaky and edited with fast cuts and jarring imagery. A lot of the videos show dirty environments accompanied with eerie music and some very off-putting speech. One video is just 6 minutes of someone filming a crime scene from a distance, and on top of all of that is a couple of videos of ambiguous meat being cooked that viewers were led to believe was actually human meat. All the videos are uncomfortable to watch for some reason or another, and I have to say, doing the research on Meat Sleep is one of the only times where I had to stop for a little bit because I freaked myself out so much watching these videos. Particularly that strange voice, it just really gives me the creeps.
I took you and I keep you warm. I feed you. You live here.
Now, like most entries of this nature, Meat Sleep was actually an art project. It was done in a really unique way though, so the channel eventually ended up with a video titled No More. The video simply features text explaining how the channel was run. Apparently multiple people from various countries would use dice rolls to determine every aspect of the videos, from who was going to edit them to what the general idea was, for example whether the video implied a killer, kidnapped victim, or a cannibal, etc. The No More video goes on to explain that the whole thing was meant to be fun and creative, but was turned ugly and ruined. This is in reference to the fact that a lot of active viewers, in hopes of getting to the bottom of the mystery, had found some connections between the channel and a few people and places, and after that they began to harass them. After this started happening, they decided to end the project. It's sad because the imagery, editing, and sound are done so effectively in these videos, and maybe that has something to do with the fact that it was divided amongst the artists. At the end of the day, even knowing that there's nothing actually sinister going on, it's still really creepy as hell, so well done. The West Records. The West Records is another found footage mystery sci-fi horror series. It follows two young men as they investigate an abandoned naval base. Supposedly a strange event happened years ago at the base where 3,000 people suddenly went missing with no explanation. They sneak into the base and begin investigating it, documenting the whole thing with a camera. Things start getting weird after the cameraman Randall ends up stuck in the woods for 2 weeks where there seems to be some distortion in time. Also, there's some creature stalking the woods that can mimic the voices of people. There are a lot of theories on this one concerning parallel timelines and alternate dimensions. Unfortunately, it appears the series is dead, the last upload being over 6 years ago. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a YouTuber and creator of the Smile Tapes, which is an analog horror series. During the 90s, a new mysterious drug has entered circulation throughout the black market in the United States, making headlines. The drug, nicknamed Smile, is made using the spores of an unidentified fungus. Its many effects include mania, uncontrollable laughter, violent tendencies, as well as smiles. It's a very common trope in analog horrors to have distorted faces at one point or another. So this basically takes the premise of disturbing imagery, particularly that of smiling faces, and makes a whole series out of it. I'm not trying to undersell it though, especially as the series goes on. The Smile Tapes actually are a cut above, in my opinion, when it comes to distorted face imagery. This one in particular, despite being a source of memes, is pretty haunting. Your Local Breadman. Your Local Breadman is a YouTube channel featuring a lot of strange videos. The guy has a very unique art style that I think stands out in the area of YouTube, and this is most well represented in Pergaliminal. Pergaliminal is a very surreal take on an RPG game your local beardman says he wants to make one day. He's made concepts for what Pergaliminal might look like, and I have to say, if this game ever got made, it would be really fun to play. That art style is just really rad. Vintage 8. Vintage 8 has done a number of analog horror series, most recently a series called Nobody, which sort of plays like an old children's game, kind of like Bloody Mary, where the video suggests you set up a VHS camera and record an empty chair that you ask 3 questions to. Then you place the VHS tape in a random mailbox that's not yours, and if the tape returns to you, it'll have a figure sitting in the chair answering the 3 questions. It sort of progresses from there and gets more disturbing as it goes. Vintage 8's most popular video is called the Tangy virus. It follows the study of a virus in several patients who have contracted it. One patient dies, one is an asymptomatic baby, and the other 2, a child and adult, become increasingly violent. The child killing his parents, and the adult killing her husband and then stealing the baby. From there, things get more weird, with the virus seeming to have a connection to aliens. Turns out the virus is a living thing that controls the person's body. So Vintage 8 has some pretty cool stuff cooking. Lost in the Hyperverse. Lost in the Hyperverse is an animation YouTube channel focusing primarily on backrooms videos. Typically, a video seems to be a POV of someone exploring a level of the backroom similar to that of the Kane Pixels video. This channel seems to focus on some of the more bizarre and outlandish levels like the Playtime Palace and Eternal Suburbia. I think it's done really well, and if you're into the backrooms, these are definitely a must watch. 2H32. 2H32 is a really weird horror channel. Every video on the channel is exactly 2 minutes and 30 seconds long, and all of them begin with a digital clock counting forward from 2:30 a.m. These videos feature horrific and terrifying imagery. They have a nightmare quality to them that's just full of disturbing creatures and situations. The thing that sets these videos apart from a lot of the channels on this list is that it's actually shot really well. Despite the terror in the scenes we see, it's beautifully shot and well put together. Whoever's making these videos knows what they're doing, and it really feels like art. Every video ends with the clock hitting 2:32 a.m. and closes with a very creepy final shot. At least, typically that's what happens. There's one character that seems to reoccur. He's got a fleshy white mask that's sometimes covered with a second mask that only has one eye. Reminds me of something, but I can't think of what. Honestly, you could just take a screenshot of some of these scenes and they would be a perfect provocation of horror. There's this one short clip featuring a couple of black creatures with red eyes peeking into a room, and it freaked me out in particular because I have a long history of night terrors, and as a little grief I would often see black monkey-like creatures with red eyes climbing on the walls and furniture. But that's a story for another day. Of course, there are a lot of theories and speculation about these videos and their cryptic nature. The YouTuber Nexpo pointed out that 2:32 a.m. is closely associated with the witching hour, and that it's specifically called Heaven's Hour, which is supposed to be the exact opposite of evil. Doesn't really look that way. Anyway, I think the channel is worth checking out, if not for the horror, for the beauty. Tier 6, Beyond Birth. Beyond Birth is an underrated analog horror channel. There are several different videos that can be watched independently on the channel. One common theme is psychedelic imagery, like in the video 001, which seems to be about a man being tested on with psychedelics. On top of that, Jesus comes up a lot on this channel. Probably the most eerie video that also kind of feels like a goof at the same time is called Christ the Redeemer, where we see a person's first-hand account of what looks like Jesus hovering in the sky. It's actually kind of freaky. There's also several videos about St. John's Crater National Park and what appears to be a ranger going missing. The strange thing is, all of these seemingly separate things, the psychedelics, the Son of God, and the hole, all appear to overlap at various points, so maybe these videos are all connected. It's hard to tell, but it's kind of cool and, like I said, underrated. The Christ the Redeemer video alone should have a lot more views. Creative Boy. Creative Boy is one of the few channels I've seen that's actually a mix of analog horror and comedy. The videos mostly play out like short sketches or jokes, but being presented through the realm of analog horror.
One of these days I might just end it all, but I don't have the guts to do it.
Excuse me, sir.
Don't fucking interrupt me like that.
That's not to say that they aren't creepy, but I actually really like the fact that someone took a niche horror genre and decided to use it for a comedy angle. It's a fun channel. Nephthys Media. Nephthys Media is a fictional media company and series of analog horror videos featured on the YouTube channel Black Dragonfish. The series explores the discoveries of a space probe and the information it's collected concerning a nearby solar system. This strange solar system houses many planets and moons that are both similar and drastically different than ours, featuring organic or dead living moons, deep ocean worlds, mechanical worlds, and even a world that seems to be a mirror of Earth. There is alien life in this system, and it doesn't seem to be hostile, which is surprising for a series like this. Another set of videos that exists in the same fiction is called the Kepri program, which is a program made to identify and understand alien life form entities in a similar way that the SCP Foundation works. It's an interesting take because the cosmic horror for this is so literal. It's really the ultimate fear of the unknown. The Macabre Experiment. The Macabre Experiment is a cool one. It's basically a series of, you guessed it, analog horror videos that revolve around some of the most classic and iconic creepypastas, but reinvigorating them with this new video horror format. It covers Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, Been Drowned, etc. It's a cool idea and a good way to keep some of the internet's classic horror stories alive. Deeper. Deeper is another very cryptic channel. It's somewhat similar to Meat Sleep, but not edited in the same way or really even as creepy on a surface level. The videos seem generally pretty tame. That is until you take into account the titles of the videos along with some other clues. The first upload's title is a hexadecimal code that translates to a Latin phrase meaning "they followed." Another video title has the coded word "stalker," and things get really creepy with the video title here. A simple video of a hill is shown, but if you follow the titles we get the phrase "they followed stalker here." This hill was actually found on Google Maps and is somewhere in Colorado. Eventually a second video was uploaded of the hill, although this time we hear sirens in the background and a strange and warbled noise near the end of the video. This sound is actually a hidden message and was decoded using a spectrogram to be the name Stephanie Ann Bauman. It turns out Stephanie Ann Bauman was a young woman who was murdered in 1980 in Athol County, Colorado. And just to be clear here, I'm not talking about the fiction, this is an actual woman who really did die in 1980. All of this comes together to make these videos way more sinister and disturbing. Was the channel creator the person who murdered this woman? The channel continued to post cryptic videos that all led to a list of multiple other victims whose murders were unsolved. So the channel hasn't made an upload for 3 years, and I'm not sure if it's fact or speculation, but people have said that the creator has died. Like I said, I don't know if that's true, because that seems like the go-to assumption when a channel like this stops posting, because it's just creepier to say that. The thing is, to this day, it's still sort of up in the air as to whether this is all just an elaborate ARG or possibly someone actually connected to these murders. If it is just an ARG, a lot of people have frowned upon the fact that the creator used actual murders as part of it, but I've also seen people who think it adds an extra layer of horror. I think they're probably both right. Dark Mind. Dark Mind makes various types of content, usually in the analog horror category. Most of these videos revolve around multiple entities that Dark Mind has actually created himself, and it does stand out a bit because the art is really good. With these types of videos, you get used to people just photoshopping images to oblivion just to distort faces, but Dark Mind is actually an artist and makes really great horror images which translate perfectly into his videos. One thing I've realized doing all this research on analog horror is that the imagery is really important. At this point, there's so many series that you really need unique horror-provoking images just to stand out. Onigiri Cat is a horror YouTube channel. Its most popular series called The Happy Child Cases. Go buy a happy child is sort of the slogan here, as the videos often encourage people to buy a happy child, which at least appears to be a partially robotic recreation of a child, although there are implications of them being organic as well. Throughout the videos, it's clear that these happy children have the capacity to transform into towering monsters that can kill their owners, and the company that creates them is always redacted from the videos, leaving this as a mystery. This is a newer series that has a lot of potential, so keep an eye on it. Tier 7. Analog Anthologies. Analog Anthologies is for sure the most obscure on this list, the channel only having 13 subscribers and the most popular video only having 146 views. This particular channel focuses on Vietnam using real-life footage from the war in conjunction with a fictional story of something dark and sinister going on at the same time. This is actually a really good idea because I think that Vietnam makes for a great setting for horror, maybe because the real-life war was so horrific in and of itself. The first two videos act as training videos, but something's off. At a certain point, the tape seems to be hijacked by someone who's communicating directly to the viewer. It reminds me of Needle Mouse in that regard. The tone also makes it seem like something horrible happened to a specific US soldier named Tom. Just as we start moving towards understanding what happened to Tom, no more uploads. Yeah, the first few videos were uploaded in a span of a couple months, but the last upload was made almost a full year ago. It's a shame because I could see the series turning into something cool, and the setting, like I said, is just really unique. Grub and Snitch. Okay, we really jumped off the deep end here into obscure, and I just want to restate that. Grub and Snitch is an animated horror comedy series, and it only has 6 videos on the channel. It's, well, let's just move on from this one.
Oh my god, it's James L.
The Quentin Sanders Tape. The Quentin Sanders Tape is a pretty unique entry on this list as it's something akin to a radio drama. It follows Quentin Sanders, a 1964 professor and linguist who finds and studies an ancient tome called the Atrocidias Compendium. The book details horrific atrocities, and as Quentin continues translating and researching it, he begins to develop an obsession and then even starts to hallucinate creatures. The book talks of a powerful entity known as the Mind Corruptor. There's also an explanation portion of the video that explains a phenomenon known as the husk stage, where after finding the compendium, Quentin starts physically deteriorating and changing. It's a well-done story, and as I said, it stands out, feeling more like a visual novel. Kashenko. Kashenko is a horror YouTube channel who's made a rather vague series about a creature that stalks people while they sleep. Like I said, the series is really vague, but it's another one in the analog horror format, and there's really not a lot of videos here yet. Paul Me Paul. Paul Me Paul is a Filipino YouTuber and creator of the Taguig Anomalies. I probably am pronouncing that wrong. They have a series of videos all revolving around the Grim, a supernatural entity with a distorted face. The Istin Hole. It's another analog horror that seems to be a ripoff of the Mandela catalog, except with some more just straight up goofy moments. Or at least I hope they're intended to be goofy. The Paracosm. The Paracosm is a really fresh one with a really cool concept. There's only 2 videos on the channel, and like I said, it's a fairly new series. On one of the videos, someone left a comment that I think is probably the best explanation for the story, so this is from YouTuber Daniel Youngblood, whose theory is that the Paracosm is some sort of realm where magic is believed to have originated from. Ancients believed that accessing the Paracosm would bring them to some paradise. Then, some cult in the 1980s opened a gateway to the Paracosm through a ritual, but either something went wrong or the intended effect was bringing about an apocalyptic event in which statues appeared all around the world. Protecting these statues was a race of subterranean humanoids who were hostile to anyone who approached the statues. The world has seemingly declined since then, as there's no longer any broadcasting stations apart from the one that broadcasts old programs and bizarre footage. However, there's apparently a group studying the Paracosm and the footage associated with it, which makes me think these videos are events that have already occurred. So that's the best explanation that I've seen, and I don't think my idea of what's going on really deviates much from that. So for this one, go subscribe and check it out because it's a really cool concept. Okay, so that is the entire Horror on YouTube Iceberg. Hope you guys enjoyed watching or listening. Leave a comment if you know of any horror series on YouTube that just don't get enough love, or an iceberg chart you'd like me to cover. Thanks again for the support. I mean, the last video really blew my mind. I just didn't expect to get that big of a response. Also, shout out to the diehard commenters out there like Pijog, Rocket Girl, Daydream Fuel, Zane, Beige, Soma, Finn Davis, and I know there's a lot more. I do want to put together a Discord server for the channel where everyone can talk about video topics, topics, suggest ideas, and just overall have conversations concerning the type of stuff I cover here on this channel. So let me know if anyone's interested in that. I would probably need a couple of moderators. Anyway, I think that's all I got for now. This is Groove speaking. Goodbye, friends.
Got no remorse, lack of sleep, of course. Got my